What if I told you that the stage for the end times might already be set, and at the center of it all is a nation most people overlook? It's not Rome, it's not Russia, it's Iran. Yes, the same country that today appears in the headlines for conflicts, nuclear threats, and sanctions. But is all of this just geopolitics? Or could it be that, behind the curtains of history, Iran is simply playing a role that was written centuries before it ever existed as a modern nation? In the Bible, it's not called Iran, it's ancient Persia. And surprisingly, Persia was not an enemy of Israel. In fact, it was a key piece in God's plan to free his people and rebuild the temple. But how? How could a pagan empire have been the very hand God used? And more than that, could he still be using this same territory today? Get ready, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see the Middle East, prophecy, and even God's prophetic clock. Madai, to the eye of someone reading Genesis in a hurry, might seem like just another name in a long list. But hidden there, among Noah's descendants, lies a secret. Like a silent seed sown into the earth, Madai's lineage sprouts into a much greater plan, the divine sovereignty that stretches across centuries. Just as some families preserve traditions for generations without knowing their origins, God works behind the scenes of history, writing stories before the characters even realize they're on stage. It's like a script in which each person is born already holding a role, even if they don't yet know it. What many people miss is that the union between the Medes and Persians wasn't just a political arrangement. It was an almost perfect fit between two lineages with a prophetic mission. Like a family that inherits a centuries-old farm without ever having stepped foot on it, the Bible shows us that spiritual legacy works the same way. Madai, the ancestor of the Medes, ended up woven into a story that would later directly impact the people of Israel. Nothing was accidental. No detail was improvised. Behind the curtain of great empires, there was an invisible hand adjusting everything, and that teaches us something powerful. God's sovereignty does not work in chaos, it works in the details. Sometimes you don't even know why you were born into the family or city you were, but a divine narrative is being stitched together right there. The same God who used Madai to create a people that would one day alter Israel's destiny could be using a detail in your story for something far greater than you imagine. And what if this is only the beginning of something even deeper? Some people still believe that only the righteous are used by God, but the Bible shatters that idea right from the start. Take Cyrus, for example, a pagan king who didn't even follow the commandments of Israel, yet he was chosen by God to free the Jewish people and rebuild the temple. Isn't that ironic? An empire no one expected became a key piece in the prophetic plan. Sometimes the same thing happens today. Secular nations signing treaties that benefit Christians, or atheist leaders who, unknowingly, help fulfill prophecy. It makes you wonder, are we looking at the world with the right eyes? Some people only see geopolitics, but those whose eyes are trained by the Bible see prophecy. Persia was used by God, even though it wasn't a holy nation, and the same may be happening today, with Iran, Russia, or even European countries that many have already dismissed spiritually. It's like a chessboard. The king is still in control, but even the most unlikely pawns play a decisive role. The secret is in watching the moves. That political decision that seems insignificant, it might be the beginning of something much greater, a signed treaty, an unexpected alliance, a leader elected in a distant country. All of it could be part of the prophetic script. Persia's role in biblical times wasn't obvious, and maybe the role of certain nations today isn't either. But when we begin to see with Daniel's eyes, everything changes. It's curious how Persia, once a liberator, later appears in Scripture as an enemy. That may seem strange, but it's not a contradiction. It's a prophetic pattern. God doesn't work with improvisation. He works in cycles. First, he uses, then he tests, and finally, he judges. It's like someone who starts out helping a company a lot, but over time gets lost in power and becomes a problem. The same instrument that builds can also be the one that tears down if it moves out of God's timing. This cycle is clear in the Bible. Persia was a tool of redemption in the time of Cyrus and Esther, but in Ezekiel 38, it shows up as part of a coalition against Israel. And what does that reveal? That God does not change, but the roles of nations shift according to prophecy. It's his script unfolding in different stages. Anyone who reads Daniel closely will notice this progression. It's like a play where the same actor returns to the stage, but now playing a different role, wearing a different costume, and this connects deeply with our time. Have you ever considered that a nation that today favors Christianity might be the one to persecute it most tomorrow? The prophetic cycle does not bow to human expectations. It follows divine purpose. That's why we can't rely solely on the headlines. We must read the Bible, observe the patterns, and understand what happened with Persia might be happening again today, right before our eyes. Long before Iran started making headlines and became a key piece on the board of modern geopolitics, the Bible had already revealed its role. Prophecy didn't begin yesterday, it began long ago, in Genesis 10, with Madai, a simple name forgotten by many, but one that carries within its lines an entire future. The post-flood genealogy isn't just a list, it's a map, and on that map, Persia appears as a strategic point along the path of God's will. This revelation changes everything. It shows that Iran is not an outsider in the biblical narrative, but a character with a designated role from the very beginning. Once we understand that, our perception shifts. What seems current is, in fact, ancient. Madai fathered the Medes. The Medes joined with the Persians, and from that union, a nation was born, one that God had already written into history long before kings, empires, or modern-day conflicts. The apocalypse doesn't catch God off guard. It's the fulfillment of something he already revealed. And this serves as a warning to those who think the Bible is outdated. Nothing in it is random. Every people, every name, every nation has a function. Iran's presence in the prophetic scenario is not accidental. It is appointed. It is fulfillment. When you stop seeing the world through the eyes of the news and start seeing it through Daniel's eyes, you realize time is short, and the plan behind it all runs much deeper than it seems. Sounds strange, right? But the Bible is very clear. God can even use those who don't believe in him to fulfill his promises. One of the most remarkable examples is Cyrus the Great, a pagan king with no connection to Israel's faith. Yet God called him my anointed. That's right, and more. Isaiah prophetically mentioned his name over 100 years before he was even born. That's not luck or coincidence. That's sovereignty in action. Imagine someone who's never opened the Bible being raised up to fulfill a prophecy that began centuries before. It's like a businessman who doesn't even believe in God, yet donates funds that help translate scripture in persecuted countries, or a politician who, unknowingly, passes laws that protect Christians. God doesn't need man's faith to act. He only needs his will, and when that will moves, even unbelieving kings become instruments in his hands. This kind of thing makes people uncomfortable, because we tend to think only the righteous are chosen. But prophecy, the apocalypse, and the Bible itself show the opposite. God uses whoever he wants, however he wants, and that should change the way we look at the events around us. Could the next Cyrus already be sitting in some palace today? Could he already be making decisions that will shake the spiritual landscape? We need to pay closer attention. God's sovereignty doesn't respect human borders. It goes beyond race, religion, and politics. That might feel uncomfortable for some, but the Bible shows it time and again. God doesn't choose someone because they seem the most qualified, but because He has a purpose. He anoints whomever He wants, even pagan kings, atheists, or rulers of empires that reject Him. And that completely changes how we view authority and influence. Think about today's scenarios. A celebrity who's never spoken of faith suddenly mentions Jesus on national TV. Or a government totally opposed to Christianity somehow allows Bibles to enter the country through a diplomatic loophole. Seems odd. That's prophecy in motion. God can use even those who don't believe in Him. And that should teach us something profoundly important. He doesn't need anyone's permission to act. What seems unlikely to our eyes is often the very path He chooses. Ancient Persia proved that, and modern Iran might be proving it again. The apocalypse will not be fulfilled through predictable characters. It will unfold through bold, unlikely, unconventional players. And if this is the moment when He is moving the pieces once more, are we paying close enough attention? The story of Esther reads like a fairy tale, but with prophetic codes hidden within. A young Jewish orphan, hidden inside a pagan empire, ends up becoming queen. And that wasn't luck. It was destiny. God placed Esther there even before the danger arrived. The most curious detail, He doesn't appear directly at any point in the book, yet His hand is in every scene, like a director who never steps on stage but orchestrates every line. Esther was positioned exactly where she needed to be at the right time to prevent the destruction of her people. How many times does that happen even today? Someone in a position of power, seemingly disconnected from heaven, but who, in a crucial moment, does something that changes the fate of many. Have you ever thought that maybe you, at work, in college, or even in your family, were also placed there for a reason you haven't understood yet? God still works that way. In silence, in the middle of pagan systems, He plants seeds, people, who will bloom at the right time. Esther is a mirror of the divine pattern, positioning before crisis. If He did that with her in Persia, why wouldn't He be doing the same today? Through someone, in places no one would expect. That classic nativity scene, with the wise men from the East bringing gifts to Jesus, holds a secret that few people notice. Those wise men weren't just star scholars. They were very likely the spiritual heirs of Daniel's influence in Persia. That's right. The legacy of a captive prophet echoing centuries later, in another generation, another context, yet still under the same prophecy. Nothing about that was accidental. The journey of the Magi wasn't driven by astrology, but by revelation. They knew what they were doing. They were following a sign, but also a promise that had been passed down among scholars, generation after generation. It's like when someone in your family teaches you something so valuable that you carry it for life. Now imagine that happening within an entire culture shaped by the seed Daniel planted centuries earlier. They came from Persia. They recognized the Messiah before many in Israel did. That teaches us something powerful. Sometimes outsiders see more clearly than those on the inside. And what if there are modern-day Magi today? People who, even far from traditional faith, are following signs, searching for truth, and on the verge of discovering something greater. In Ezekiel 38, ancient Persia reappears, but no longer as an ally. This time, it shows up as part of a coalition that rises against Israel in the last days. That frightens many people, but it also reveals something profound. Even rebellion is under divine sovereignty. The prophecy already foresaw this turn. God used Persia in the past to restore, and now, even in opposition, He uses it to fulfill what was written. The plan continues. It's as if the same actor has returned to the stage, but with a different costume. Before, it was liberating. Now, it's challenging, but the director of the play is still the same. When we look at Iran's current moves, The conflicts with Israel, the northern geopolitical alliances, it all seems to fit into a script that was already written. The apocalypse is not improvisation, it's fulfillment. And Persia, once again, stands at the center of the prophetic stage. This brings us to an uncomfortable reflection. What if God is even using rebellion as a tool of warning? What if these confrontations are the signal that time is running out? Prophecy doesn't just say what will happen, it reveals why it happens. And maybe, amid all this tension, there's something the world still hasn't fully realized. When we look at everything Persia, or today, Iran, represents in the Bible, we can see a clear pattern. It's not about being a good or bad nation, but about being a tool. God used Iran in the past, is using it now, and according to prophecy, will use it until the end. That shouldn't create fear. It should create discernment, because when you recognize the pattern, you begin to understand the times. The problem is that many people see these events as nothing more than international politics, a war of interests, or historical coincidence. But those who know the Bible understand none of this is new. From Madai to today, Iran has been a thread in the fabric that points directly to the apocalypse. The turns this people takes, the highs and lows, the moments of blessing and of conflict, it's all following a greater pattern designed by God. So the question is, what if that pattern is still in motion? What if the next chapter has already begun and most people haven't even noticed? Iran isn't just a point on the map. It's a living reminder that the Bible is still being fulfilled, step by step, exactly as it was said thousands of years ago. And now that you've come this far, tell me, how many times have you read the book of Daniel thinking it was just an ancient text, without realizing it was describing your present? Prophecy is not a riddle for a chosen few. It's a loving warning from a God who is still in control, even when everything seems out of place. Iran, the apocalypse, the pagan kings, none of this is a coincidence. It's a pattern that repeats. But did you notice? Have you been paying attention to the signs around you? Have you been seeking discernment, or just following the news as if it were all random? The knowledge you've received today isn't common. It's for those who want more. So here's my challenge to you. What will you do with this? Will you keep it to yourself, or will you start seeing the world with new eyes? If this message made you reflect, then it was already worth it. Now, if you want to keep learning, growing, and uncovering the hidden truths of the Bible, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next videos will help you understand a lot of things that still seem confusing.